Have you invested weeks, months, or even years into your dreams or into the purpose you believe God has for you, but have yet to reap the benefits? Or maybe you've been investing into your children, but they still remain wayward. Or maybe you've been working hard at a job, but you have yet to get that promotion. Well, if you've ever felt like all of your efforts have been in vain because you aren't seeing the rewards of your labor, this episode is just for you. Let me start off by telling you a story. A man was working in his garden one morning when his young son came to him and asked him if he could plant his own little garden. The father paused and thought for a moment, and then he quickly agreed as he figured this would be a great opportunity to teach his son some important life lessons. He gave him several bags of seeds to start with, which included one bag that was simply labeled special. He then told his son that there was only one requirement that he had to commit to no matter what. And that requirement was that he nourish, and water the soil. The son happily agreed and quickly gathered his supplies. But before he walked off, his father firmly grabbed his arm and reminded him that he had agreed to always nourish and water the soil no matter what. So off he went to plant his seeds. Then after about a month or two of nourishing and watering the soil that the seeds were planted in, he noticed that every plant had sprouted and begun to grow, except for the seeds that were labeled special. Assuming that something was wrong with the seeds, he quickly ran to his father and explained what was going on. But his father's only response was, nourish and water the soil. So the son did exactly what the father said. He nourished and he watered the soil. But after 6 months had passed and the seeds hadn't grown one bit, he was absolutely certain that his father had given him bad seeds. That could be the only explanation as to why, after all this time, they hadn't grown. So again, he goes to his father and explains the situation, and his father's only reply is, nourish and water the soil. So the son continues to nourish and water the soil. Now, it may be hard to believe, but this went on for 5 long years. This son had gotten into the habit of nourishing and watering the soil that had seeds that produced no fruit. He no longer asked his father any questions. He simply was accustomed to the ritual. Then one day, as this now young man was tending to his garden, he noticed a little green sprout in the place where he had planted the seeds so many years ago, and he was confused. He was even more confused the next day when that same plant had grown 3 feet tall, and this plant continued to grow like crazy for the next several weeks. You see, what the young man in this story didn't realize is that his father had given him the seeds to the Chinese bamboo tree. This plant will not sprout and grow until 5 years after it is planted. And after that, it will reach the heights of nearly 90 feet in about 6 weeks or less. But none of this can happen if the soil isn't nourished and watered over the 5-year period. Because what you can't see is that the roots are growing strong and deep, preparing a solid foundation for the bamboo tree to grow when the time comes. Which brings me to this question. What seeds has God planted in you? What purpose has He planted in the soil of your life that He needs you to continually nourish and water? Oftentimes we don't know, which is why it is so important that while we are waiting for God to reveal to us His purpose for our lives, we need to nourish and water the soil of our relationship with Him, as well as nourish and water the soil of excellence by doing whatever task God places in our path to our greatest ability. You see, a lot of times we get weary because we don't see the results of our labor right away, or we get discouraged because we don't see the plans of God being fulfilled in our lives, and we get tired of the wait. But oftentimes, the wait is simply the time that God is using to prepare us for greatness. Take Moses, for example, one of the greatest leaders of all time. It wasn't until he was 80 years old that he was ready to walk into the awesome purpose that God had destined for his life. But it took years of his soil being nourished and watered for him to be ready for that great task. So the next time the devil tries to keep you from nourishing and watering the soil of your life, just remember the Chinese bamboo tree and keep preparing your soil for greatness. God bless. I hope that this message touched your heart. And as always, remember that you are extraordinary through Christ. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe.